Governor DeSantis, thank you so much for joining us for this NBC News Des Moines Register series, Closing Arguments, Iowa.
Governor DeSantis, welcome to the Des Moines Register newsroom. We are 11 days from the Iowa caucuses, so let's get into it. First, though, we wanted to take a minute and talk about some unfortunate breaking news that's happening here in Iowa today. There was a shooting situation at a high school in Perry, Iowa, just outside of Des Moines. That news is still developing as we're speaking, but the authorities have said that multiple people have been injured. I just want to get your reaction to that.
Well, one of the things I've done as governor of Florida was respond to the Marjory Stoneman Douglas shooting that happened before I was governor. And so we got recommendations, report, and we've done over $1 billion for school security, and it involves a lot of different things. But as the father of 3 young kids who are in school, first grade, kindergarten, and pre-K, we want as parents to have safety in the school. So we've put a lot of emphasis on this. We're still getting the details about what happened here in Dallas County, but my sense was that there was a pretty robust response, and if that's the case, hats off to law enforcement for doing that.
And you, as you mentioned, are a parent. What can you say to Iowa parents right now who are afraid, who are watching this news? These school shootings keep happening, who are worried about sending their kids to public schools?
Well, look, I mean, we obviously, have a responsibility to create safe environments. Federal government's probably not going to be leading that effort. I think it is more of a local and state issue. But we've shown how it's done in Florida. The things that we've done have been very, very effective. But we also just have to look at, for whatever reason, there are people in our society that really get a kick out of doing this. And you have people that put it online and do all that. And that's an underlying sickness in society. And I think that involves things like mental health. Florida, we've worked hard to identify some of these folks because the shooter at Stoneman Douglas, everyone knew he was the one who did it before that even been reported because there were so many warning signs. We'll see what happens in this Dallas County. That may not be the case here, but in a lot of it, it is the case.
And you're right. You have been through these situations before. Have you had a chance to reach out to Governor Kim Reynolds and offer any advice about how to move forward with this?
I actually did speak with her earlier this morning. She's all over it, got a great handle on it. I know she's going to be doing she told me she'd do a press conference in the afternoon. And so I think that the folks responded very well.
After the shooting in Maine last year, you told my colleague Kristen Welker on Meet the Press that you do not advocate for stronger background checks. You also pointed to liberal soft-on-crime policies as part of the problem. And yet, this can also happen in conservative Iowa, clearly. Is there any change from the current federal policy that you would support to make mass shootings like this less common?
Well, what I said about the soft-on-crime, though, is I said, I didn't address it in terms of the Maine shooting. What I said was there's shootings that happen in places like Chicago routinely that the media doesn't cover the way they cover some of those other ones. The reason why you have those in a lot of the inner cities is because these are repeat offenders who are not held accountable when they could have, when they're committing crimes that are less gravity. We know what works and we know what doesn't work, and the policies that have been in place in those cities, they have universally failed when they've been tried.
But would you make any change at the federal level to make something like this less frequent?
But here's the thing. This person was already a prohibited possessor of firearms in Maine. And that's the point I made, that was already against the law for whatever reason, that wasn't something that was activated. Clearly, people that are convicted felons under current law and people that have mental adjudications, that's the law, and that should be enforced.
So there's no change that you would advocate for at the federal level?
Well, I don't support infringing the rights of law-abiding citizens with respect to the ability to exercise their constitutional rights. I know these things can be used to try to target things, and a lot of the things that are proposed would not have even prevented any of these things. And that's typically, I think, what we've seen in these cycles. But people can count on me to hold criminals accountable, be very serious about holding accountable people that represent a danger to society, but at the same time protecting their constitutional rights. I think it's very
right.
For example, like I don't support what Donald Trump has advocated, taking people's guns and then going through due process. That turns due process on its head. I mean, the whole purpose of due process is you have the right to property, not just firearms, any property. The government has to go through due process before they can deprive you. So there's a difference, I think, between the two of us on that.
Well, to that point, how do you square that position with your call for more institutionalization for people with mental illness? What about their right to due process?
You do have due process. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like in Florida, we have something called the Baker Act. It's not just willy-nilly picking people up and and putting them in an institution without, of course there's due process. But what you find in some of these people is clearly, they have trouble functioning in society. There's massive warning signs. Of course there needs to be due process before you would do that. But that used to be done in this country with much higher frequency. And I'm not saying you go back to where we were in like the 50s, but I think that we've gone so far in a direction. You see some of the homeless that are on the street in some of these cities. That's a mental health problem. It's not a lack of housing. It's a mental health problem. And that hasn't been addressed very well. Some people are going to do better in an institutional setting, but you would never give government the authority to do that without adequate due process.
We want to turn now to the state of the race. When you first showed up in Iowa, you were saying that you expect to win Iowa. Your team has said a second place would do the job. And then last week in an interview, you said that Iowa, the caucuses aren't necessarily a deciding factor for you. Why have you been lowering the expectations?
I don't think I've said that. I don't think that's what I said. It's not going to be. I think people want to say that somehow, Iowa, and then people are trying to create narratives about that. Iowa's important. We've invested a lot of time here because, quite frankly, we think it pays off. We think Iowans appreciate when you go to all 50 or all 99 counties and you show up and you answer questions. I'm the only one that's done that. Donald Trump will not go answer questions. He won't even participate in debates. You have Nikki Haley. She's over in New Hampshire, and she's telling New Hampshire, oh, Iowa goes first, but you correct Iowa. What is that saying about the people of Iowa? She's not showing up to 99 counties. A lot of times her questions are scripted. She's in a situation where she didn't know the difference between a CNN anchor and the Iowa Hawkeyes star basketball player. So she just doesn't get Iowa, I don't think. So we've done that. We've shown up. We've built a tremendous organization that are going to do very well. But I have made the point, because people will sometimes say, yeah, well, people that have won Iowa have not won the nomination, which is true. So it doesn't guarantee you anything, just like people that didn't win it ended up going to win the nomination. The goal is to win a majority of the delegates. I think Iowa's going to provide a lot of clarity to how this race is. I know there's been narratives about it. I think those narratives are going to be upended.
Right. Well, to that point, what's your message to Iowans who want to know that you have a path beyond Iowa? Because right now you've placed most of your resources into Iowa. You've de-emphasized, airing TV ads in New Hampshire and South Carolina, for example. So what is your path beyond Iowa?
Well, it's too early to do South Carolina TV ads. Me doing well here will have more impact in South Carolina than if I was running ads now. We are going to do stuff in New Hampshire, so stay tuned for that. I've already committed to doing debates there. So we're in it for the long haul. Don't worry about that. We're in it for the long haul. Iowans have a chance to really have this is one of the most meaningful votes they'll ever cast. And they have a choice. Donald Trump is running to address his issues. Nikki Haley's running to address her donors' issues. I'm running to address your issues, your family's issues, and this country's issues. And I'll be a president that's focused and disciplined on those issues. We're going to have, in this country, winning again, and we're going to have success. I'm the only one running that's delivered on 100% of my promises, and I'm the only one running that's actually beaten the left and Democrats on issue after issue. Republicans haven't won very much nationally recently. We need to change that, and I'm the guy to do it.
Well, you've won big endorsements here in Iowa from Governor Kim Reynolds, from evangelical leader Bob Vander Plaats. You have the bulk of the endorsements from the state legislature, but yet that's not quite showing up in the polls. Do you think this shows that you have a better connection with Iowa's political elites than everyday Republicans?
No, we've got, we have over 1,500 precinct captains volunteering. These are hardworking, patriotic Iowans who are going out and they're recruiting more people. All these counties have been organized. We've got massive numbers of people that have committed to caucus. We're going around all over getting more people. My wife is out there doing it. She's getting more people to commit to caucus. So we're doing that. And historically, the results on caucus night have not been in line with what the polling has showed, because a lot of it is about organization and turnout. So we've put more emphasis on organization and turnout because that's what's traditionally been successful in a state like Iowa. Now, I do think that as we get closer, people are going to look and say, well, wait a minute, Donald Trump refused to debate. He never showed up, and I think he probably showed up in a handful of counties. He'll swoop in, do a rally or two, then leave, won't answer questions from voters. Is that really the best foot forward? Or, do you want a candidate that's got a proven record of delivering big conservative wins on the issues that Iowa Republicans care about, and will be able to replicate that in Washington? There's a reason why Governor Reynolds endorsed me, because she's seen the success that we've had and the effectiveness that we've had, and she knows those policies, similar to what she's championed in Iowa, if if we can do that on the national level, we're going to turn this country around.
Let's talk a bit about the trajectory of your campaign. You started out as a top challenger to Trump, fighting for first place. Now, the majority of the energy of your team is really focused on fighting Nikki Haley. Can you admit you found yourself in a fight for second place?
Well, I've had $40 million spent against me. That's more than all the other Republicans combined. That's more than has been spent in this election cycle combined with Biden and Trump. And they've come in after me. So that shows you that they view me as a threat. They would not be spending that type of money if they didn't think that I was a threat. So we're doing it. I mean, look, when we're getting hit, we're going to hit back. But I've been very clear about drawing contrast with Donald Trump. I think the issue is, a lot of people in corporate media, they only want to see you hitting Trump the way, say, like a Chris Christie does. We focus on those contrasts. A lot of times you don't get very much play with it, but I'm out there delivering that in town halls, in debates, when I'm there meeting voters one-on-one, because there are big contrasts in terms of Trump's promises and lack of delivery.
But you're
and then
much
my promises
closer in the race to Nikki Haley than you are to Trump. What happened?
Well, no. I mean, first of all, Trump has always been leading in the race. I mean, he's the former president. He's one of the most famous people in there.
But you're not even the top challenger to him now.
We are the top. They wouldn't be spending that money if we weren't the top. I'm the only one that has a chance to beat Trump and win the general election. Nikki Haley can't get conservative voters. She's playing for voters who are not even core Republicans. And they've even, you guys love polls. When they do polls, if they take Trump out, I'm winning overwhelmingly because core Republicans and conservatives trust that I would do well.
Can you admit this is not where you wanted to be at this point?
She is playing for a fringe, but she's not playing to win. In fact, she will not even rule. So most of her support are people that really don't like Donald Trump. She's the darling of the never-Trumpers. And yet, when she's asked, okay, will you just categorically put this to bed and say you will not accept the vice presidential nomination? She will not answer that question.
But again, you're more engaged in a fight with Nikki Haley than with Donald Trump at this point. And look, you've got even close advisors, according to the New York Times,
That's
top
false.
advisor Ryan Tyson,
He
saying
did not
that
say
you're now
that.
at a point where you
That's not true.
He
did
said
not
they
say
need
that.
to make the patient comfortable.
He did not say that.
He's evoking hospice
He did not.
care.
He did not say that. He said he denied that. They went on anonymous sources to try to do a hit piece on me. Republican voters know these anonymous sources from these liberal media outlets, they're trying to do a narrative. They're going after me because they fear me as the nominee. I'm the one that they don't want. So Republican voters can look at this and say, okay, the guy that the liberal media doesn't want, that's got to be the best endorsement I can possibly have. So you can launder anonymous sources and try to do all that. Reality is none of that is accurate. And the reality is everything we've set out to do, we are doing here in Iowa, and you're going to see that on caucus
Well, you've
night.
put all your eggs in the Iowa basket.
That's not true.
Can you name another state you think you could win?
That's not true.
Can you name another state you could win?
Yes. You wait till what happens when we get out of Iowa. It's going
What's
to
another state
create
you
a lot
could
of.
win?
We're going to be able to win a lot of states. We have a great
Can you name
organization
one?
in New Hampshire. We have a great organization in South
Do you think you
Carolina.
could win New
We
Hampshire?
can have a lot of great organizations throughout Super Tuesday. So you're going to see this is very dynamic. You're going to see it's a long process, and we're going to be able to win. So stay tuned. But to say that we've put all the eggs is not true. We have great organization and field programs in the early states, and we're going to compete in all of them.
Would you consider joining forces with Nikki Haley?
For what?
To defeat Donald Trump. Is it important enough to you to team up with Haley on a ticket to try to defeat him?
I don't think that would be something that would be viable. I mean, her voters, she has a limited ceiling in the Republican Party, and I think that a lot of my supporters here in Iowa, for example, they want to move on from Trump, but if they had to choose between Trump or Haley, they probably would go with Trump because his policies are more in line with what they want. Haley really represents, more of an establishment, entrenched D.C., New York type view, and that's not what they want. And I think that she's not been somebody who's been able to really stand strong on the issues that conservatives and Republicans care about.
You talk about Nikki Haley's ceiling, though. Shouldn't the Republican Party be able to expand the electorate and bring in people in order to win in November?
Well, of course, and that's what I did in Florida. I mean, we won overwhelmingly in places like Miami-Dade County. No one thought a Republican could win there. We won independents overwhelmingly. We won women overwhelmingly, which Republicans never do. The issue with her, though, is she can't win core Republicans. As the nominee of the party, you've got to inspire your base to be able to come out. before you even get into being able to do that. And I think she's playing to people, by and large, who are not core Republicans. I think you're going to see that in the results in the Iowa caucus and then beyond as we get into these other states.
Well, speaking again of Nikki Haley, and you mentioned this in some of your earlier comments, but in a New Hampshire town hall last night, she said that, Iowa starts it, but New Hampshire corrects it. Do you think New Hampshire is going to correct what Iowa decides?
Well, one, I think it's a slap in the face to Iowans to say that they somehow need to be corrected. It's almost as if like she's acknowledging she's not going to do well here, and so she's blaming the voters. That's unacceptable. And I can tell you, I've gone to all 99 counties. I've spoken with people all across this state, and what I've come away with it is a lot of optimism about America, because you have people that are hardworking, God-fearing, patriotic. They represent the backbone of this country, so they don't need correcting. And I think for Nikki Haley to be in a different state and trying to virtue signal in ways that diminish the voters of Iowa, I think it was a mistake. But sometimes these gaffes are what people really think, and I think that's what she really thinks. She's not showing up in the places that I've shown up, and she's not going to do that. She's relying on massive amounts of money from a lot of liberal donors on Wall Street and in Silicon Valley to try to do it. That doesn't work in Iowa. And I think the people that have tried to do that traditionally have not done well. But it does just come on the heels of, her botching Caitlin Clark and trying to say, mixing up a CNN anchor with the basketball star here. And I'm just thinking to myself, she's phony. She doesn't have core set of convictions. She's coming in here. She's trying to be relatable, but just doesn't get Iowa. And I think that's becoming more and more apparent. And here's the thing. Her, quote, rise was media driven. There's not a lot of grassroots energy. You can talk to all these activists here. They're not seeing it. It's been media driven. But now that she's facing scrutiny, what they giveth, they can taketh away. And so I think you're going to start to see, a lot of turbulence just because she's not good off script. She can take the scripted questions the minute she's got to improvise. We saw it in New Hampshire a week ago with some of the other stuff she's had to deal with. So I think that's going to be par for the course. And as Republicans, you need to have a candidate that's going to be able to handle this, because you are going to be put through the wood chipper by the corporate press the minute you're going against a Democrat, and she's just not going to be able to handle that.
And I want to go back to something you said earlier. You talked a little bit about the contrast you're making with Donald Trump on the campaign trail. This week you've been asked by a couple of Iowa Republicans, why aren't you going after him more? This is somebody who has 91 criminal felony counts across 4 indictments. Isn't that something you can drill in on a little harder?
The problem with that is if you look at people like Alvin Bragg, who brought some of those, if you look at Jack Smith and the Garland Justice Department, those are just not good actors in my judgment. And so I don't want to be in a situation where I'm aligning with people who are politicizing the law. Now, practically speaking, Republican voters just have to look at this and say, okay, do we want the election to be about the issues that the American people are facing? Do we want to be able to hold Biden and the Democrats' feet to the fire for their failures and offer a way to a better future for Americans? Or do we want the election to be about Donald Trump's conduct, about January 6th, about criminal cases and all this? And it'll have reverberations up and down the ballot because, if you're in the summer and he's in some trial, if someone's running for U.S. Congress, people like you are going to ask them, oh, this witness testified. What do you think? You're not going to be able to get a message out. So I think it will reverberate up and down the ballot. I'm running because I think I'm the solution to get us out of this to where we can win and then deliver on all these promises. So just practically speaking, you don't want the election to be a referendum on Donald Trump and all these issues from the past. That plays into the Democrats' advantage. And just think, look, I saw this firsthand when he first got elected. He inspires opposition on the political left, unlike any other person. In fact, he does a better job inspiring Democrats to come out to vote than Democrat candidates are able to do. And I think that's one of the reasons why Biden and the Democrats want to run against Trump, because they can play that playbook into their advantage. So just from a strategic perspective, if I'm the nominee, we're going to focus on the issues that are important to the American people. We win when that happens.
We've talked a lot about the potential impacts of his trial on the campaign, but do you think Donald Trump will go to jail for his alleged crimes?
Oh, I don't know, because I don't know the details on this, but I don't think that would be good for the country. But I also think that, he's in some hostile environments. Do we want to put the future of the Republican Party in the hands of probably an ultra-liberal Democrat D.C. jury. D.C. juries have not been kind to Republicans over the years. I don't think a lot of Republicans would want to be in front of that. So I think we're taking a huge risk by empowering a jury, probably an all-Democrat jury in the nation's capital, the most Democrat area in the country, to pass a judgment. Because obviously, if they rule against him, if they have a verdict against him, that's going to hurt us in the election.
So given those potentials, do you think there's a possibility he could be imprisoned?
Well, it would depend on the charges and the judge. I will say it seems like this judge in D.C. is a very hostile customer for him, and so who knows what will happen. I don't think it would be good for the country if that happened, though.
Well, I want to ask, too, about Iowa's caucuses. In 2016, Donald Trump came in second to Ted Cruz, and he questioned the results of those after the fact. He said it was, quote, stolen by Ted Cruz. Do you have faith in Iowa's caucus process, and would you accept the results?
Of course, but here's the thing. If he doesn't win this time, he's going to say the same thing. It doesn't matter what happens. He will say the same thing. That's just how he rolls. But no, I think it's a good process, and I have faith in the integrity of it. And I think I just partially because I have faith in the integrity of Iowa Republicans.
And to that point, I mean, more broadly, do you think it's time to move on past this period of not accepting electoral outcomes? And in November, if Biden does win the election, would you accept a Biden victory?
So here's the thing. I think looking forward is better. But I also think the media is hypocritical with this because the Democrats did not accept Bush in 2000 after Bush versus Gore, even though the media did the recounts in Florida and showed Bush won. The media did not, the left did not accept 2004 Bush victory, and the media didn't really get on the Democrats for that. And then they definitely didn't accept 2016 with Trump. So it's almost like they're blaming Republicans about 2020, but not looking at this other history of the Democrats. Republicans, when we win in 24, you're going to see stuff on the left that's going to end up happening. But one of the things I've pointed out about the 2020 election is Donald Trump empowered his own demise because he signed the CARES Act. So the Republicans, and I'm one of them, we don't like all mail ballots. We don't like them changing the rules during COVID and all that stuff. It's true. But that would not have happened had he not signed the bill.
But this is why I ask broadly, is it time to move on past this period of not accepting electoral outcomes? And I do think there's a false equivalency there of what has happened after Republican victories versus after Democratic victories. I mean, we'll talk about January 6th, but I don't think there's a comparison between
Russia collusion. I mean, your network was very much into that. The networks were into that. The whole idea was Russia was involved,
so if it's
and that was a phony
to heal the country,
conspiracy theory.
Do you think it's time to move on past this period of not accepting outcomes? And would you accept, if Biden does win in November, would you accept the outcome?
So if we're relitigating past elections as Republicans, we're going to lose. We saw that in 2022.
I'm looking forward.
The candidates
Can you give a
that were
direct
doing
answer
that
to that
were going to
question?
lose.
Would you accept a Biden victory?
Well, I have to see what happened. I mean, you know, if it was a transparent victory, obviously you accept the results. But I don't know what Democrats have up their sleeve. I mean, what you're saying, if there was fraud, I'm just supposed to turn a blind eye? No, I'm not going to do that. I mean, Florida runs elections very well. It's transparent. I think Iowa does a good job. Not every state does it. Some states like California take weeks to be able to count the votes. How is that acceptable? I remember the LA mayor's race. You had a result the next day. They kept counting, and then the second place finisher ended up going in first. So some of these states do not do a good job, and I think that any candidate should have a right to lawfully protest if there is fraud.
Let's talk about January 6th because it is the anniversary coming up here. What lessons did the country learn from January 6th? What did you also personally take away from that day?
Well, look, I mean, I think it's been politicized by the left. You know, I don't think it was supposed to be. That was not supposed to happen. I think people went to protest, and I think it got out of hand. But I think
it's something that happened to our nation. What do you think we can take away from it?
I think that's more of a media with the anniversary. I know that this is like Christmas Day for the media, like to talk about January 6th. I know it's a big deal in a lot of the corporate outlets. I get that. I've not had a single question in Iowa about January 6th. I mean, I've taken hundreds and hundreds of questions. I think people are focused looking forward, so I'm not going to spend time, you know, in my campaign either now or in the general election, you know, talking about rehashing that. Obviously, there's been a lot of energy that's gone into it. I'll let Donald Trump handle that. I mean, I know he was, president during then. I know some of his supporters got caught up in this who, were just basically there, didn't necessarily do anything violent, and they've now got caught up in the law. He was not willing to give them any type of legal protection or clemency on the way out the door. Now he says he would do it, but I think that's probably too little too late.
You've said you would pardon former President Trump. Why do you think that's the best decision for the country?
Well, I said I'd be willing to do it in order to move the country forward because, to send he's almost 80-year-old, to send to prison potentially, is that going to help heal the country, or is that just going to exacerbate the divisions in the country? And I think when Ford did that with Nixon, you had a situation where it was not necessarily the popular thing to do, but in hindsight, it was the right thing to do because at some point, you've got to come together and look forward. I don't want to relitigate all this stuff involving Donald Trump. That is not going to be helpful for this country. And so it's really about what's best for the overall American people. It's less about Donald Trump specifically.
To follow that logic, then, if you were in the Oval Office, would you ask Republicans to stand down on investigations of Biden in the spirit of not putting the country through more turmoil?
Well, but Biden has not been held accountable for anything. I mean, Trump is facing all these charges. Biden has not faced anything. They haven't even been investigating a lot of the stuff criminally like they have against Trump.
But he's also 80 years old.
There have been different standards of justice that have been applied on these investigations because the amount of money that's come into their family, how does that happen where you have millions of dollars that's coming into the family and yet that's not leading to major FBI? I mean, I don't know that the congressional investigation has been very effective. I know they promised things. I don't know how much they've actually delivered on it, but we aren't even scratching the surface on that.
So heal the country when it comes to Trump, but not when it comes to Biden. What about Hunter Biden? Would you pardon him?
Why? No.
Same question. I mean, in the spirit of healing the country, of moving forward.
No, those are not the same things. You have a current administration that is prosecuting the former president. That is not the same thing as a Hunter Biden prosecution. Hunter Biden was not one of the leaders of the opposition political party. So when you have that, that is not healthy for this country to be doing that.
Neither is division, as you said.
Well, Hunter Biden is not creating division. Hunter Biden, if he had been not connected to the D.C. ruling class, he would have been prosecuted a long time ago. But those are not equivalent things in terms of like a Ford and Nixon and then versus some of the things that we're seeing with Donald Trump.
I want to move into some Iowa policy questions. You wrote in a Des Moines Register editorial the other day that, quote, there will be consequences for other nations like Mexico and those in Central America that allow illegal immigration to continue. What consequences would you impose?
Well, we'll have a range of options. I mean, obviously, I've said we are going to authorize the use of military against the Mexican drug cartels, not necessarily against the government, but these cartels are killing a lot of Americans. They're killing way more Americans than have died from terrorism in the last 5 years, and yet the country shrugs its shoulders. Donald Trump is now promising to do that. He did not do that as president. I mean, the cartels were moving in massive quantities of fentanyl. People were dying by the tens of thousands. And yet, no. So now he's promising to do that. We have a lot of leverage over Mexico. We have political leverage. We have economic leverage. Ultimately, I think if a determined executive is going to get Mexico to get in better line. And I think having a new president of Mexico will help. I think the current guy's been a big problem.
Would you do that in cooperation with the Mexican government?
We'll cooperate with them, but we also have to reserve the right to defend our people. And I'm not going to let fentanyl pour into this country just because Mexico is not willing to cooperate with us. So we are going to stop this because I've met angel parents in Iowa who've lost kids from fentanyl overdose. And you can have a son or daughter, take one pill, think it's something else, it's laced with fentanyl, and they could be poisoned to death just on the spot. That is unacceptable, and we need to stop that.
And you're taking a really aggressive stance here with Mexico. You've slammed Mexico and China on things like fentanyl, foreign ownership of U.S. farmland, and other issues. But those countries are among the largest buyers of U.S. farm goods, something that Iowa farmers know really well. Can you grow trade with China and Mexico given some of these aggressive stances against those governments?
Well, we have the best agriculture products in the world. Certainly countries like Mexico are going to need that. But what I am going to do is there's many other countries in Asia that don't provide good access to their markets. And, they've been talking about big trade deals. I don't even think you need to do that. I think we have leverage where we could be able to fight for more openings so that our farmers can sell more products there. So we are going to do that, and I think we're going to be able to expand markets.
Would you pursue trade wars with those countries in order to expand those markets?
So we will use leverage as appropriate. I think when you look at like a China, that's a larger geopolitical issue of how our economies have been intertwined in ways that have been detrimental to the United States, how we're dependent on them for a lot of things. And so using different levers to be able to reshore critical manufacturing, for example, that's something that's very much in our wheelhouse that we're going to be doing. We've been sold a bill of goods with respect to China in terms of the benefits. They've taken a lot of industry. They manipulate their currency. They cheat, obviously, on all the trade stuff. And so we need to rectify that.
And on another issue, you've said that you support the use of eminent domain to a degree in the use of the Keystone XL pipeline. What about in the carbon capture pipelines that are being proposed across Iowa? Would you support the use of eminent domain there?
Not from federal, for sure. I mean, I think that it shouldn't be for private use. It should be for public use. Something like a road or, Keystone, I think had been vetted to where that's a massive public use. I think some of these other things are more about private gains for companies, and that's not something I think is appropriate for eminent domain. So I think you'd have to negotiate with the landowners in that situation.
So in this Iowa case, which is ethanol producers, other biofuels producers.
I think they should negotiate with the landowners in that situation.
But what happens if they're not able, in those negotiations, what happens if they're not able to reach a resolution, if they're at an impasse?
Well, the only way you can use eminent domain is if it's for something that's considered a public use. And that has a defined definition. It's been litigated all the way up to the Supreme Court. Traditionally, conservatives, including me, have viewed public use more narrowly. I think people on the left have viewed it to say, well, if you can get more tax revenue or things like that, then you can do it. The lady in Connecticut that went to the Supreme Court, I mean, they took her house because they said if they developed the property, private development, that they would get more tax revenue for that. But that is not protection for private property. So that was a bad decision. I've been a critic of that for a long time.
So would you view that narrowly here in Iowa? Again, this is ethanol producers wanting to capture the carbon emissions.
We would definitely not do any federal eminent domain. I'm not sure what the law is in Iowa, but federally we will not do that for that.
And lastly, look, running for president is hard. Anyone who tells you otherwise has not been in your shoes or any of your opponent's shoes. Your campaign, from the start, from that sort of glitchy launch with Elon Musk, I'm sure you remember, has had multiple points where you've pivoted, where you've had shakeups. Looking at where you are now and where you started, is there anything that you, looking back, would have done differently, whether it's how you handled Trump early on, whether it's that launch? Is there anything that you would have changed?
Well, look, that launch, I mean, that was out of our control. But the reason why it was glitchy is because there were so many people that wanted to be on it. And so it showed there was a lot of interest in that. Look, we haven't had multiple shows. I mean, we did some stuff in the summer and we've done very well in the campaign. I know you guys like to focus on the PACs, but I don't have any control over that, as a candidate. So you don't look back. I mean, I think that if you look at what we've done the last few months, winning debates, getting key endorsements, doing these town halls, visiting all the places, we've done what you would want a candidate to do. Now, there's a lot of things I can't control as a candidate, and so I've just got to focus on the things that I can control and work as hard as I can and do the best that I can. And so we've been clicking as a campaign, and even these PACs that I don't control, I think they're doing very well now. I think the ground game's doing well. I think some of these others are doing well on the air, and I think you're going to continue to see that as we get deeper into this process.
All right, Governor, anything else you'd like to add?
Well, look, this is an opportunity. Iowans, you're never going to cast a vote that's going to be more meaningful than this one. And so I'm asking for the support of every Iowan to come out and caucus for us. I can tell you this, in Florida, people that voted for me my first race in the primary have said, I voted for you, but man, you've done better than I ever thought. And even the people that didn't vote for me in that first primary, I have people come up to me to this day, say, yeah, I didn't vote for you in that primary. That was one of the worst votes I ever cast. You've done a great job. So I will do you proud, and we will get the job done.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.